Well, it's now time we go straight to the papers and see what they have as a major one on their front page. And for review today, we have five papers. We have the Punch as much as we have the Vanguard, the Guardian, the Nation, and Nigerian Tribune will be really wrapping things up today on the dailies. And you do know I always enjoy starting with the Punch. Let's see what the Punch has as a major one on its front page. On the Punch this morning, the lead story reads, 19 oil block license to expire this year. The riders to follow, 12 PPLs, 7 OPLs of affected as tenure dates near. And the NUPRC malls extension for some expiring oil concessions. An expiry schedule cuts across onshore, offshore oil licenses. But anyway, go to page 19 to know all those 19 oil block licenses to expire this year. Let's see if we take some other leading ones. Well, a sad one yesterday, and I felt it really, really hard. And I'm talking about the death of Dolly Parton, and as the United States lower flags for 1 week. And no surprise, she was indeed an icon, and she died at the age of 80. While you could still remember hits like Coats of Many Colors, Jolly, a whole lot, honestly. She made our very young age quite memorable. But I'll tell you to get more of that story up on page 13. Governor spent 512 billion on travels and offices. It's also making rounds on page 2. What's also on page 2, Tinubu orders reconstruction of the Bini bypass and others. And I will say it's quite timely, knowing how the hurdles and pains most motorists go through, especially with that dilapidated side of the road. Trump moves to revoke nearly 200,000 asylum seekers' visa. It's also making the rounds on page 14. Let's see if we take some other leading ones. State's IGR soars 34% despite economic hardship. It's also making the rounds on page 20. Police boss Ogun baby factory rescue pregnant women and children. It's also making the rounds on page 4 and 5. Drug lords' assets must be seized. And this is according to Buba Marwa. And, well, you know, he's the NDLEA chief chair. And he feels that will help to deter them. But get that story up on page 10. Story on page 13 and making the picture of the day is the Eid al-Malud, Tinubu governors can preach peace and tolerance. And you can see the celebration cut across different parts of the country. Well, that's the much we can take from the Punch. Let's quickly run to the Guardian to guide us through more as it concerns the dailies. Federal government hastens police reform to douse a self-help plot in our communities, and it's quite timely. And I'll tell you to get more of that details on page 6. Tinubu, Jonathan, Diri, Dixon, Abba unite on merit integrity in public service. It's making the rounds on page 3. NDLEA helps on assets for future to discourage crime. Like I said, Buba Mara is presidential debate. Page 3 seems to have more of that calling of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu by the opposition. Let's see if we take some other leading ones. South Africa, 65 Nigerians to return today by private sponsorship. It's also making the rounds on page 4. Manufacturers count cost, begin adjustment to sachet alcohol ban. And you can understand why that's on the business page of page 20. Osibajo Falana advocates citizen-centered pro-democracy reforms in judiciary. It's also making a round on page 6. Bini Asaba gridlock. Umahi accuses control state local councils as motor parks as party street blame. And you can get more of that story up on page 5. The picture of the day, like we said, is the lead story of the main story right there. Let's see how the police reform can be hastened to help deal with the issue of self-help plots in some communities. Well, that's much you can take from The Guardian. Let's quickly run to no other but The Nation. And The Nation, Confucius rocks article fuel subsidy return campaign as contradictory statements. And don't contradict yourself, but get that story up on page 2. Let's see if we take some other leading stories still on The Nation. Eberi Papa petitions Tinubu on Niger Delta region PAP. It's also making the round on page 16. To win drug war, barons must lose their wet, says Marwa on page 41. Palliative work begins in Adokaba, Bini Asaba roads. It's also making the round on page 45. Inspector General of Police, Nigerian security crisis now interconnected network. And no surprise, that story is making the round on page 3. APC asks police to arrest Henye is on making a round on page 6 as a US flag to fly half-mast for Dolly Parton. No surprise, she still remains a global icon as it concerns country music. But you can get that on page 7. Let's see if we still have some other major ones. Yes. NFIU, public funds firms used for money laundering. It's making the round on page 2. Tinubu urged prayers against insecurity as Muslims mark Eid Malud as Khan urges peaceful coexistence. And you can get that on page 3. Rescue adoption victims in Niger. President orders security agencies, and that's making the round on page 3. But the picture of the day is pupils of an Islamic school in Kaduna during the 201 annual Eid Malud celebration yesterday. And you can see a colorful parade by those young children. Well, anyway, that's the much you can take from the nation. Let's quickly run to the Nigerian Tribune as we really look at more to come. And on the Nigerian Tribune this morning, the lead story reads, Atiku to boycott debate unless Tinubu joins, says ADC. We're still talking about the 2027. Remember, we'll be looking at this critically later on Dialogue as we call for peaceful, issue-based campaign rather than that of falsehood and calumny. Challenges presidency to debate on petrol subsidy removal is also a kicker to that very lead story. But get that on page 22. Ibadan Ijebu Ode Road reconstruction flag off. APM slams federal government for not inviting Makinde. Claims Tinubu scared of Oyo governor's popularity and performance. But get more of that story up on page 23. 43 feared killed. Several adopted as terrorists lay siege to 5 Niger communities. Tinubu condemns killing, mass adoption, orders immediate rescue, says terror won't cow Nigeria. And I'll tell you to get more of that very disturbing story on page 13. Let's see if we take some other leading stories here on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian ranks 56th among world's poorest countries by GDP. This is according to Global Finance magazine on page 7. U.S. hails Dangote refinery as Nigerian petrol exports surge 7 times. And you can get that story up on page 7. Nigerian petrol consumption declined by 25% to 35.7 million barrels per day in July 2026, according to the NMDPRA on page 7. Dirty air may trigger hemorrhoid arthritis flare-ups studies is saying on page 5. Federal government begins repairs as minister visits Oyekiti, Kaba Road, Benin Asaba Expressway. Motorists resort to forest route as Umahi blames concessionary. And you cannot blame yourself if you don't get more of that on page 5. To be defeated, drug barons must lose their reward, Marwa declares at Cambridge, and you can get more of it on page 3. NFIU receive over 28 million reports on transactions involving politically exposed person in 2025. It's also making a round on page 3. But the picture of the day is a book launch in Bayelsa by Didi, and you can see all those dignitaries all smiling on that very book launch. But that's the much we can take from the Nigerian Tribune. Let's quickly run to no other paper but the Vanguard as we wrap things up today on the papers. And the Vanguard this morning, highway of horror. Motorists wail, spend 4 days on Benin Asaba Road, recount ordeal, federal government to review concession roads, apologizes to Nigerians. Get more of that apology on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Dolly Parton, U.S. country music legend, dies at 80. Wow, she's really a coat of many colors. And well, no surprise, the United States is lowering their mast flag for 1 week. But I'll tell you not to wait that long. Get that story up on page 7. 2027, why coalition failed to pick single presidential candidate? Forgive me for laughing, but Amechi is giving us details on that. Crude import by domestic refineries jump 151.5% in July, says NMDPRA. Zenith Bank rallies trade leaders to drive value addition in non-oil sector or export is making a round on page 8. Let's quickly get some more pay Rasi concerns. The Vanguard this morning. 2027 presidency, ACF, PANDEF, Middle Belt Forum demands scrutiny of candidate history. Background checks raise moral issues, but law remains supreme, says Afenifere on page 28. Edo Malud, Tinubu governors, can PDP others preach peace unity on page 13. Drug war, Marwa sees global action to seize traffickers' wealth. Is also making the round on page 13. U.S. plans revocation of 200,000 visas of asylum seekers. Is also making the round on page 9. Nigerian fight to save 1.4 trillion naira agro export. We are 80% ready, says exporters, but federal government struggles with its role. But I'll tell you not to roll away, but get that story up on page 3. Let's see what Mr. and Mrs. seems to be saying. Mr. with a very big pot belly said, I thought it was a foreign dish when I saw manihot esculanta and abelmo. Eba and okra soup, it cost me 26,000 naira per plate. Well, anyway, he was confused with the name given to okra and also the one given to eba. Well, anyway, you can still remember it's escalanto.